The 2025 Northern Virginia housing market has felt like two completely different stories. In the first half of the year, buyers are facing 7% interest rates, bidding wars, low inventory, record high prices, and government worker layoffs. But in the second half of the year, demand slowed sharply as many home buyers simply hit a wall and a lot more listings started sitting on the market. So the big question is, does 2026 finally bring a real shift away from the red hot sellers market towards something more balanced? Well, in this video, I'll share with you my bold Northern Virginia housing market predictions for 2026. Will prices go up? Will they go sideways, or will the market finally crash? Well, we're about to find out, so stay tuned. Boom! Hey everybody, it's David, your favorite realtor. So let's get this video started off right now with my first Northern Virginia housing market prediction for 2026 with new listings will rise by 10%. So one of the biggest challenges these past few years has been a lack of new listings hitting the market, which has caused sellers to have a huge advantage over buyers when it comes to negotiations. So here's a very common scenario these past few years. A brand new listing hits the market on a Friday. They already have an offer deadline set for Sunday evening. The house ends up getting 10 offers, ends up selling for $50,000 above asking price, with buyers waiving all their contingencies, including home inspection and appraisal. And as a home buyer, these multiple offer scenarios can be extremely frustrating because you're either gonna win the house by way overpaying, or you're gonna lose and you're right back to the drawing board. So more new listings hitting the market is going to help reduce these crazy multiple offer scenarios. Now, brand new listings hitting the market in 2025 did go up 5.5% compared to 2024, but it's still well short of recent history. And to put that 5.5% jump into context, for every 13 homes that hit the market in 2024, 14 homes are hitting the market in 2025. So it's definitely a jump, but not a huge jump in new listings. Now, if you look farther back, new listings this year are down 42% compared to the 7-year average from 2015 to 2022, which is the 7-year period before rates hit 7+%. Home prices probably would have gone down these past few years had the normal amount of inventory hit the market. But the demand for housing was still way higher than the available supply of homes for sale, so that's why home prices still went up this year. So the reason why I believe there'll be more new listings hitting the market in Northern Virginia in 2026 is, these past few years, the dramatic drop in new listings was due to rates going from 3% to 7% in a matter of months, which caused sellers to experience something called the mortgage rate lock-in effect. So what that means is a homeowner does not want to become a seller because it's extremely hard to give up your 3% rate and then turn around and buy a new home at a 7% rate. Especially in this scenario, your mortgage payment can more than double. However, pent-up seller demand is increasing because most sellers are starting to accept that rates are what they are and life events are happening, whether it's a need for a bigger home, a need for a smaller home, or leaving the area for a brand new job. So a lot of potential sellers who thought about selling these past few years are now ready to jump off the sidelines and get their homes on the market in 2026 and move on to their next chapter in life. So even with a 10% bump in new listings, we would still be well short of the 7-year average from 2015 to 2022. So we still have a long way to go to get back to normal levels, but at least we're going in the right direction, which will give more balance to our market. Now, my next Northern Virginia housing market prediction for 2026 is mortgage rates will hit 5.9% by the end of the year. So mortgage rates are almost impossible to predict as there's so many different factors that go into rates. And who would have predicted back in 2020 we would have a global pandemic that caused rates to go to all-time lows, and then just a couple years later, rates hit 8% for the first time since 2000. And 2026 is an even harder year to predict, especially with Jerome Powell's term as Fed chair ending on May 15th. And President Trump will name a successor by Christmas. Plus, he's already made it clear that he is pro-rate cuts. So you know he's gonna put someone in who's also pro-rate cuts as well. So yes, the Fed chair is a very powerful position, but there's still just one vote on an 18 and 19 member committee. So even a very dovish or hawkish chair can only move policy as far as the rest of the FOMC is willing to go. Now, the Federal Reserve has paused the intense rate hikes that we saw in 2022 and 2023, and they actually cut interest rates 3 times in 2024. And as of me filming this video in early December, they have cut rates twice so far in 2025. So a lot of experts are calling for 2 to 3 rate cuts by the Fed in 2026, which would be very similar to 2024 and 2025. Now, I'll say this about Fed rate cuts. They can help push interest rates lower. However, mortgage rates mostly follow the 10-year treasury. So sometimes the Fed cuts rates, but mortgage rates don't go down, and sometimes they even go up. But we're already going in the right direction with rates, as in the first half of the year, mortgage rates fluctuated in that 6.8 to 7% range. But since August, they have fluctuated in that 6.25 to 6.5 range, and currently the 30-year fixed rate is 6.22%. So even with potentially only 3 rate cuts in 2026, I believe mortgage rates will finally get down to that 5.9% range by December. Now, as much as I love making YouTube videos about living right here in Northern Virginia, what I love even more is helping folks just like you relocate to the area. So if you're even thinking about moving to Northern Virginia, reach out to me, give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. Just know I got your back when you move into Northern Virginia. Now, my next prediction is home prices will rise 3 to 5% in 2026. So this prediction is for Northern Virginia only, as real estate is hyper-local and every market is going to be completely different. In other markets of the country, we'll definitely not see the same 3 to 5% increase in prices. In fact, other parts of the country, home prices may stay flat, and in other parts, prices may even go down. But I'm very bullish on home prices in Northern Virginia going up in 2026, as this is one of the most educated, wealthiest, and affluent areas in the entire country. Now, I would personally love to see a pullback in prices because that would make me a buyer in this market, but unfortunately, I do not see that happening in 2026. In fact, if you look at the data, historically, US home prices have increased in most years and significant price drops are very rare. Now, from 2007 to 2011, during the Great Recession, this is the most notable exception of home prices dropping in modern US history. So I wouldn't bet a single dollar that home prices will go down next year, especially in one of the wealthiest areas in the entire country. So in my last year's predictions video, I predicted that home prices would rise 6 to 9% in 2025. Now, I was a little short on that prediction, as home prices went up in 2025 3% compared to 2024. Now, the number one reason why I see home prices rising in 2026 is simple: supply and demand. Even with the potential increase in new listings hitting the market, we're still gonna have way more demand than the supply can handle. Another factor is, if rates actually get into the 5s, then that would add even more buyers to the marketplace, creating way more demand. So a 3 to 5% increase in home prices would be a healthy and balanced market and would be par for the course, as US home prices have increased about 3 to 5% on average in the past 50 years. Now, what's not a healthy market is a 20% crash, or on the flip side, home prices going up 15% in 1 year. So this is what I imagine our housing market to look like in 2026. During the spring market, many homes are gonna get multiple offers and sell for above asking price, which causes home prices to rise. But in the second half of the year, the market will soften and many homes will take a lot longer to sell, giving buyers the opportunity to negotiate the price down. And when it's all said and done, by the end of 2026, home prices will be up 3 to 5% higher compared to what they are today. Now, my next prediction is rent prices will rise in 2026, but not as high as 2025. So the average rental in Northern Virginia in 2025 is $3,600 per month, which is $323 more per month compared to 2024. And that $323 increase in 2025 is by far the highest year-over-year increase in the past 10 years. In fact, on average, rent prices usually go up anywhere from $50 to $125 per year. And the reason why rentals went up so high in 2025 is, well, the past couple years we've been sitting at all-time record high prices with 6.5 to 7% interest rates. So that right there makes it substantially less expensive to rent a home versus buying the exact same home. Now, let me share with you an example, and these numbers are absolutely gonna shock you. So here's an active rental listing in Ashburn for $4,700 per month. Now, if you were to purchase this exact same home, it would sell for at least $1.45 million. So with a 20% down payment, plus your taxes, your insurance, and HOA dues, you would be looking at a mortgage payment of almost $8,500 per month. So this home right here would cost you more than $3,800 more per month to buy versus renting it. And that is why the demand for renting is so strong and why rent prices have gone up so much this year and will continue to rise. Now, with mortgage rates potentially going down in 2026, plus all the pent-up buyer demand, a lot of current renters will just bite the bullet and turn into buyers instead of renewing their leases, which will create less demand for rentals compared to this year. Also, a lot of homeowners are locked into 3% rates. Well, instead of selling their house in 2026, they're gonna put their homes up for rent instead, because with that 3% rate, they're most likely gonna cash flow immediately, which will increase the rental inventory all throughout the region. So yes, rental prices will still rise in 2026, but back to the normal levels of that $50 to $125 increase year over year. Now, my next prediction is the number of home sales will increase by 8%. So you may not know this, but back in 2023, nationally, we had the lowest amount of home sales since the 90s. And we followed that exact same trend here in Northern Virginia as well. In fact, we had more home sales in 2008, which is during the biggest real estate crash we have ever seen with the Great Recession. And 2025 hasn't been much better than the last couple of years, and we're still gonna end this year with substantially less home sales compared to 2008. And this blows my mind that there was more home sales in 2008 than 2023, 2024, and 2025. So I remember finding this information out for the first time a couple years ago, and initially I did not believe it because the thought process was no one was buying homes in 2008. That's literally why the market crashed. Well, apparently they were buying homes in 2008 and even way more than the last 3 years. So we're gonna end 2025 with about 24,000 home sales in the 4 major counties in Northern Virginia, which will basically be identical to 2024 and would be 31% lower than the average of the annual home sales between 2018 and 2022. And a common theme here is higher mortgage rates have caused buyer demand to plummet these past few years, and a lot of potential home sellers have decided not to sell because of the mortgage rate lock-in effect, and all of this leads to a lot less activity in the marketplace. So the reason why home sales will bump in 2026 is there's both a lot of pent-up seller and buyer demand. And we're going into year 4 of 6% plus rates, and the market is adjusting to the higher rates. Plus, as time goes on, more life events happen to people like having kids, getting divorced, getting married, relocating to and from Northern Virginia. Plus, if rates actually get down into the 5s, then a lot of buyers and sellers are gonna jump off the sidelines and get into the marketplace. And if this was to happen, then I could see home sales increasing at least 10% instead of my initial prediction of 8%. But even if the number of home sales in 2026 go up 8 to 10%, we're still gonna be well short of our average. Now, my next 2026 Northern Virginia housing market prediction is fewer multiple offer situations than we did in 2025 and way fewer than what we saw in the insanity of 2021 and 2022. Now, if you think back to those pandemic years of 2021, it seemed like every single house was getting 5, 10, 15, 20 offers, selling for $50,000, $100,000 above asking price, buyers waiving all their contingencies, and this was just the cost of admission. So if you were not willing to do that back in 2021, well, then you were most likely not buying a home. Now fast forward to 2025, and that's definitely cooled off. Now we still see competition, but it's more like 1 out of 3 homes are getting multiple offers instead of 3 out of 4 homes getting multiple offers like in 2021. And my prediction for 2026 is that number will go down even more. So why do I see fewer multiple offer scenarios in 2026? Well, the first reason is inventory is slowly rebuilding. Now we're not gonna be drowning in listings, but buyers will finally have more choices again. And the next reason is buyer psychology has changed, as a lot of buyers are gonna be more willing to walk away if a house needs too much work or is overpriced. Now, does this mean multiple offer scenarios will completely disappear in 2026? Absolutely not, because regardless of the market, the best of the best homes, like the updated, move-in ready, well-priced homes in great locations, are always gonna attract strong interest and multiple offers. But I'm predicting the crazy, automatic bidding war environment will continue to fade in 2026. So the overall bottom line is 2026 will look a lot less like the frenzy of 2021 and 2022, and a lot more like a normal, balanced market where the best of the best homes still shine, but buyers finally get a little bit of leverage back. But as you know, if I see any changes to the Northern Virginia housing market, I'll make a brand new video and keep you updated every step of the way. And if you want to learn more about living right here in Northern Virginia, check out these videos right here. They'll be great ways to continue your research. And I'll see you in the next video.